The harsh New York morning light sliced through the gap in Julia's cheap blinds, painting a stark rectangle on the stained ceiling. She groaned, a dull ache throbbing behind her temples. Reaching for the nightstand, her fingers fumbled for her pack. The familiar rasp of the lighter, the initial sting of nicotine on her tongue, a temporary reprieve from the confusion swirling in her head. Julia blew a plume of smoke towards the ceiling, her eyes scanning the cramped room. Tiny. That's the word that always came to mind. Tiny apartment, tiny life before. Before what? Her memory was a fractured kaleidoscope. Fragments of the previous night flickered. The thrumming voice and bass of Steve's, Sonny's and Anne's guitar, the sweaty crush of bodies at the Lower Manhattan Club, the blinding stage lights. She reached for her phone, its cracked screen reflecting her own bleary-eyed image. An email from an subject. Pics from last night. Julia scrolled through the attached photos. And a whirlwind of dyed purple hair and ripped fishnets, shredding on her bass guitar. The drummer Pablo, a hulking figure hidden behind a tangled nest of cymbals. And then, a face she didn't immediately recognize in the blurred background. A man standing near the front on the right, watching her. A man with kind eyes and a hesitant smile. Philip. The name surfaced slowly, like a forgotten melody. She glanced at the empty space beside her in the bed. Empty, save for the ghost of his presence. She remembered the gig, the energy of the crowd fueling her performance. The mood when they left the pub, a haze of cigarette smoke and cheap beer. Walking back, the cool night air a welcome contrast to the club's stifling heat. And Philip, walking beside her. A takeout container, emblazoned with faded Chinese characters, sat precariously balanced on the edge of the small table. Leftovers. They had bought enough for an army. Then the images sharpened. The hesitant touch of his hand on her arm. The soft murmur of his voice. The way he looked at her, seeing something beyond the layers of smoke and self-destruction. The shared laughter, the fumbling kisses, the undeniable pull that had drawn them together. The heat, the berserk pleasure, the satisfaction. A blush crept up her neck. She quickly tossed the cigarette into a chipped ashtray, the guilt twisting in her stomach. She'd done it again. Pushing herself out of bed, she padded toward the small easel tucked in the corner of the room. It was her sanctuary, her escape. She clipped a blank canvas to it, the stark white a challenge. Memories flooded back as she squeezed paint onto her palette. The group therapy sessions. Philip, the doctor. His voice a calming balm amidst the chaos of addiction. Kind, yes, but also firm, unwavering in his belief that recovery was possible. Even for her. Their first date, a tentative affair at a quiet Italian restaurant. The way he listened, really listened, as she stumbled through her story. The years she'd spent chasing shadows, drowning her talent in a sea of self-pity and cheap thrills. Last night after the gig they had been watching TV, a nature doc she probably couldn't name now, while she was snorting cocaine in the bathroom, while his eyes remained fixated on the TV screen. What must he have thought? Shame washed over her as she remembered. Then the intense sex, a physical manifestation of their fresh connection, a desperate grasping for something real amidst the storm. She picked up a thin brush and began to sketch an outline, charcoal dust swirling in the air. Slowly, Philip's face began to emerge from the canvas. The gentle curve of his jaw, the slight furrow in his brow, the depth of his eyes. Eyes that had seen too much suffering yet still held a gleam of hope. As she worked, she lit a marijuana cigarette, the familiar smell filling the small apartment. The high settled over her, blurring the edges of reality, pulling her deeper into the labyrinth of her past. Flashes of her childhood, like faded photographs in a forgotten album. The Grand Elite farm near New York, the echoes of her mother's powerful soprano voice resonating through the rooms of the big building. Maria, a renowned opera singer, her beauty marred by a perpetual sadness. Her father, Anthony, a businessman whose empire crumbled under the weight of bad decisions and inherited vices. The Italian heritage, a tapestry woven with threads of both triumph and tragedy. Her great-grandparents, arriving in America with nothing but hope and calloused hands. Her grandfather, building an olive oil empire from the ground up. A legacy of hard work and ambition, tarnished by the excesses of the next generation. Maria's voice, once the toast of the opera house, slowly silenced by alcohol and cocaine. The dwindling invitations, the forced resignation to teaching private lessons. The constant pressure, the non-stop criticism directed at Julia, a young girl struggling to find her own voice amidst the wreckage. Julia had surpassed her mother in talent, both singing and playing the piano. By 12 she was a prodigy, her voice a pure, crystalline instrument. But Maria, consumed by her own demons, could never acknowledge her daughter's gifts. Her father, now a lonely figure in their decaying mansion, surrounded by the ghosts of his past. The factory failing, the workers barely paid. His days consumed by alcohol and the care of neglected animals. Maria had died 5 years ago, a victim of her own despair. Julia, finally free from her mother's suffocating expectations, had abandoned her promising career in classical music. She moved to New York, seeking anonymity, finding solace in the anonymity of the city and the fleeting connection of the alternative band. The marijuana swirled in her mind. At 25 she started smoking weed and then occasionally using cocaine, which she has recently step by step started to become addicted to. The escape she craved, the oblivion she desperately sought. Until the substance became a prison of her own. That's when she had sought help. And that's when she had met Philip. She dipped her brush into the paint, adding a shadow to Philip's masculine cheekbone. He was trying to save her. But could she be saved? Could she break free from the chains of her past and embrace the possibility of a future with him? She had to. For him. And maybe, just maybe, for herself.